We usually end our episodes with simply asking each other what they love.
Yeah.
But we figured that this week, since, it's our 5th episode, iconic now, our 5th episode, we wanted to maybe try to run through together our top 5 favorite movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
Because we reference our top lists sometimes.
And I don't know how far we'll go with this. I don't know if we'll go beyond top 10 or something, and because it's so strange to go back through and to think of my top 5 movies again. I think I was telling you earlier that I basically just kind of thought of it as, okay, what are the movies that I'm constantly going back to and just rewatching? What are the things that I love to just rewatch over and over again? And that's kind of how I attempted to compile my top 5, I would say. Do you want to go first, or should I go first?
Well, it would make sense for us to just each read out our top 5,
okay.
right?
Yeah, sure. All right, so let's
right. Okay, so you go first.
All right, so my top 5. Number 1, Evil Dead 2: Dead by Dawn from 1987.
That movie has a subtitle?
Yes, it does.
Dead by Dawn.
Dead by Dawn.
That's a good
name.
There's
the sequence where all the furniture is and the taxidermy is talking to him, and they're screaming Dead by Dawn. And
Have you ever seen Evil Dead the musical?
You know what? I've only seen clips of it online. I don't think I've ever seen the whole thing. Have you?
I helped put up the show at a theater that I worked at.
No fucking way. That's amazing.
It was awesome. It was amazing. And then since I wasn't working the show, I was only helping put it up and tear it down. I got to go out into the audience and watch the show.
That's so
it was
cool.
Awesome.
Was there a splash zone?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, awesome.
It wasn't terribly needed. I kind of wish it could have even been bloodier, but by the end, they then were just we're just going to go crazy with it. And it got bad right at the end.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I've said before, I'm a big fan of Sam Raimi. I think this is his most perfect movie. I think this is the most perfect movie. I think it's the most entertaining thing I've ever seen. I just start to finish.
It's really incredible.
I am enthralled with it. And going on, number 2, Hocus Pocus from 1993, which is a movie I go back to every year, and the more I go back to it, the more I read into it, weird thematic things, and the more I just kind of love it more and more as just a children's horror movie, as just a movie that is made to be scary for very young children. And I think it's amazing. And I think it's the most perfect Halloween movie ever made. I think it's perfect.
That movie really successfully spooked me out when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
I like that movie a lot.
I like it.
And I saw it. I caught it on TV a few years ago, and a little bit of the charm was gone, but I really was oh shit, this is good. The creepy effects, the dead cat effects of him, the broken cat when it gets killed. I don't know, it's good.
It's a good day of Disney practical effects, certainly, since we were talking about how they do nothing but shoot things in a green box now. It was it's definitely the sets are very real, and the witch's house is great and stuff. I almost feel in a weird way one could create a shared universe between Hocus Pocus and the Evil Dead films. I feel one could
even look at the book. Yeah.
I feel
that's funny how your first 2 movies both feature a Book of the Dead.
Oh yeah. Oh, and actually my third one does too. I think I just like the Book of the Dead. My third favorite movie is The Mummy from 1999.
Well, shit, look at that. Oh man, you can't make that shit up. That's
it's so fun. I did not even realize that till now. Thankfully, my number.
That's also a great movie.
Yes.
Talk about a movie that scared the shit out of me when I was a child.
Yes, when I was 10, I got mad at my mom for bringing me to that movie. I was like, why would you bring me to this movie? This is horrifying. Why would you do this to me? And now it's my favorite.
I watched it at home right when it came out, because 99, so I was 8 when it came out. I probably saw it at home late 99 or 2000, so I was 8 or 9. And the scene when the dead carcassy mummy wakes up and screams at the camera, I just got up and walked upstairs and just left the room. And I had to watch the rest of it the next morning, and I'm not ashamed of it.
No, it's kind of like, now I can watch it, but I still will sort of like jump in my seat during certain jump scares. Like, it really is kind of, I mean, you know, in relation to, once again, the Evil Dead franchise, I think it lives in the spirit of that universe where monsters go, blah! Like, everything like pops out sometimes, and there's a little bit of silliness to everything that's happening, but Brendan Fraser just shines the entire time. He is so good at this movie.
Yeah.
I love him.
Well, and also that's the other part, is that everybody in that movie is so hot.
Yes.
Like, everyone in that movie is so hot. I mean, I guess maybe not John Hannah so much, but like, you know.
In that Sherlock-y British way, yeah, he's got some appeal.
Yeah, no, he is. He's kind of charming.
Charm
So if that's the least hot person in your movie, you're doing all right.
But you're right, that's a sexy film. Oded Fehr's in that movie.
Sexy movie.
Rachel Weisz.
Oded Fehr, Arnold Vosloo, just like that smooth boy. Yeah, he's great.
Arnold Voss, who's like naked almost the entire film.
And Rachel Weisz, who's just a queen.
Yes.
You know, I mean.
Oh, yes.
It's.
She.
And then Marta from Arrested Development, who plays Anaxunaman, and she's also absolutely beautiful.
It's really interesting to me how much, like, for some reason, like, in the second film, Anaxunaman and Rachel Weisz look entirely different. Like, and I think they're both the same actresses playing the characters, but for some reason, like, it seems like there's a 10-year gap between The Mummy and The Mummy 2, and I don't know why it feels that way, because they're actually only 2 years apart. But, like, I really don't like The Mummy Returns. I'll just say, like, I think... Sorry, go ahead.
I liked The Mummy Returns a lot when I saw it. I used to have this like hot take that, oh man, when it was like, you know, when people would talk about like, well, you know, the key of a sequel, you look at the James Cameron model, right? You go bigger, like you go from Alien to Aliens, and then you go from Terminator to T2, and you have to take what was originally a horror movie and turn it into an action movie. And my whole hot take was like, and that's what The Mummy Returns does. It's just like that belongs in that pantheon. And that movie, I mean, not even counting the terrible CG, that movie does not belong in that pantheon.
No. That movie does not belong in that franchise. That first one is far and away the best.
It's so
good. And moving on, number 4.
Okay, number 4
does not involve a Book of the Dead. Number 4 is 1957's 12 Angry Men, starring Henry Fonda, which
that's dope.
That one.
I've never seen that.
That one has remained. Wow, that one has remained in my top 10 for a long time, because every time I go back to it, I find the subject matter very powerful, and I just think the performances are great. It is, you know, it is kind of a movie where, and maybe I don't even know if I should like say this. It is a movie of 12 white men, discussing the issue on a jury, discussing the issue of someone who is not white, who is convicted of a crime. And the movie is not telling us whether or not this person is guilty or not. The movie is simply about how 11 of the jurors think he's guilty and 1 doesn't. And a movie where, you know, 12 white men are having that conversation does, in today's society, feel very insensitive. But I feel like the conversation that they're having is really powerful. And I think that the way it's dealt with is really well at that time. I just think that for 1957, that is just an amazing film, a very powerful film about something that needed to be talked about. And just, I think it's a great movie.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot to be said about the fact that, you know, when we talk about our justice system and we talk about what it means to be a person who deserves justice, that, like, there's the idea of a jury of your peers. And where it's like, these are people that in this society, they do not see this man as their peer. And yet they are the jury that is, and like when you're making a movie where that's what it's about, like there's, you know, that's what it's, you can't ignore that that's what is part of it, you know, that like that's part of it. They're, you know, they chose to make that the character was a black man being, you know, judged by a bunch of white people. That's clearly part of it. Yeah, so that's fascinating. That's cool.
I think it's a fascinating movie, and it's every time I go back to it, that's another movie that I probably go back to once every couple of years. Like, it's just something I find it so rewatchable. It's very short. It's like an hour and a half, so it's really rewatchable. And then my last film is also a Sam Raimi movie. And if Evil Dead 2 is his most perfect film, I think number 5 is his most imperfect film. I love 1985's Crime Wave, which is kind of known as being the movie that everyone involved with it doesn't even like to talk about. But I think there's something really fascinating to the story going on and the production and just the audacity of that movie. That movie is bonkers insane, and I think it's so entertaining, even though I'm aware of the fact that the main character was like supposed to be Bruce Campbell, and it's a little distracting once you know that, because you're like, oh man, like this actor
should have been
Bruce Campbell, and the performance that they get out of the main character, it succeeds. And I think that's why I still enjoy the movie, but it is kind of like, I do consider it kind of this imperfect movie, because I'm aware of the fact that like it could have been something so much more different and zanier and stranger. But as it is,
yeah, but you can love things for their flaws.
Yeah, and I do think that this is,
or despite them.
This is a movie that I love its flaws. And this isn't a flaw. There's a sequence in this movie where like a person is running through a set of like almost like flat stages, and each one has a door that they're going through, and as a person is opening a door and closing it, another person who's chasing them is just crashing through like each one of the doors. It's just like pile driving right through it. And it is written by, I think it's actually written by only the Coen brothers, and I think it's only the second time Raimi and the Coen brothers have really collaborated on script. I think the Hudsucker Proxy.
Right, yeah, tying back into McDormand. Yeah, they used to all be roommates together, and they edited movies together.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
And it's and I do feel like Crime Wave is one of the most interesting collaborations that was a failure, and I wonder if that's why they didn't kind of continue to work together more so. But I do love this movie because the styles of Raimi and the Coen brothers are like perfectly melded in this just ridiculous thing, and I don't know, I love it. And
they're both very cartoonish.
Yes,
yeah.
very cartoonish. And so those are my top 5.
That's nice. That is that weird thing about the Coen brothers. I feel like that, like their first 2 movies right around that time, you know, Blood Simple and Raising Arizona, both became this like dual text of like, look, you're either gonna get this like grounded, realistic, you know, humanist, violent thing, or you're just gonna get a cartoon.
Yep.
And those are the only like, and we are gonna jump between those two. And but like, if you look at those 2 movies, that can kind of sum up any other movie that comes after that with the Coens.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. No, absolutely. So do you have a top 5? I know you do.
I do have a top 5. I'm gonna have to make a game time decision on my 5th one, because I have my 5 and 6 are tough.
Okay.
Okay, so my number 1 favorite movie is Hot Rod.
Nice.
I can't deny it any longer. I mean, I haven't been denying it for some time, but there was a time where I would tell people that my number 2 movie was my favorite movie. But it's just, Hot Rod is, I think, one of the funniest movies ever made. It just fires on all cylinders. It's so funny. It's so silly. It's all of these actors at this weird stage in their career, like Will Arnett and Bill Hader and Danny McBride and Isla Fisher, and it's just it's so funny and it's so silly and it's endlessly quotable. And I famously to me and my friends, but there was once a week in college where in 7 days I watched Hot Rod 8 times, and I just love Hot Rod. I just love.
Wait a minute, that was a day or a week?
Sorry, 1 week.
Okay,
Pardon me. In 7 days, I watched Hot Rod 8 times.
Wow.
And I could have done it more. I just didn't have the time.
I think I did, I did something similar, I think, for like Dark Knight. Although I think over the course of a month, I saw that movie 8 times in theaters. I went to theaters 8 times to see that movie. Yeah, that's
crazy. I've never seen a movie 8 times in theaters. I think, oddly enough, the movie I've probably seen the most in theaters was maybe The Dark Knight Rises, because I just loved that theater experience, and I kept going to IMAX screenings of it.
That's what I did for The Dark Knight.
I also saw Fury Road probably too. Fury Road, I think with you, Fury Road is the only movie I've ever seen in theaters twice in one day.
Yep. I think that's probably... for me as well, I think. Where
we saw it at 10 a.m. and we came home and just couldn't stop talking about it all day, so we went back and saw it at like 7 p.m.
Yep. Those were the good days when I was working for ArcLight and we could get tickets for free. That was great. Yeah. Great times.
Okay, my number 2 that often was the thing I used to tell people was my number 1 is Alien. Also, I think a truly undeniable movie.
Yes.
I love the creature design. I love all the performances. I'm such a sci-fi nut, and I love dirty, like, workman sci-fi. You know, it's a thing. I was talking about The Expanse earlier. The idea of, like, the sometimes banality, but the, like, grunt elbow grease workman quality of having to survive long trips in space. And then add on that one of the best horror movie creature features ever made.
Oh, yeah.
It's Alien. It's perfect.
The production design, the craft itself is so. That's the thing that I really love. I love like all the corridors and the design of all and then as the movie goes on, the drippy kind of just grossness that world lives in. Like it's.
Oh, love the drippy stuff. Love the drippy stuff. Love the chains on the drippy chains.
Yeah.
It's so badass. Harry Dean Stanton, Yaphet Kotto, R.I.P. He just recently died.
Yeah.
But like,
Ian Holm as well.
I think, and I love that movie. And there isn't really a movie in that franchise. And I'm not talking like versus Predators things. There isn't really a movie in that franchise I dislike. You know, like 3 and Resurrection are wildly imperfect, and Covenant almost kind of doesn't exist to me. I got to watch it again because I've heard people like it. But like, I love Aliens, love Prometheus, but I think Alien is just kind of untouchable. I think it's so good.
Yeah, no, I can definitely understand why one would think that. It's a pretty incredible film.
Okay, my third favorite movie is Fellowship of the Ring.
The extended cut or the theatrical release?
You know, I think I would just go theatrical. I think that I love the extended cuts and I can watch them and enjoy them. But like, as a person who so much of the, you know, we talked about our relationship to Tolkien a bit in the Warcraft episode, but like, I feel like as somebody who was so raised on it and had so much of Tolkien in my heart that like, I really love the distillation of the theatrical versions of Peter Jackson's movies. I think that they really, you know, there are things that would have been nice to have in the extendeds are nice, but I think that there's really something special to being able to process it as a movie without it feeling like this really, really long extended experience. And I love Two Towers. I think Two Towers is the one that most necessitates the extended cut. And Return of the King is a good movie. I think that it also is a bit of a slog at some points. But I think that Fellowship is just so good.
I agree.
And all the characters are so incredibly well distilled. Sean Bean, Sean Astin, Viggo Mortensen, Elijah Wood. He was so young when he was making that movie. He was barely done making The Faculty and shit, and like was I just given so much.
Yeah.
And I just, that movie is so, and it still has, you know, we talk about like, you know, stage 1, chapter 1 potential energy. And this movie has all the kinetic energy of the Balrog and the Uruk-hai fight and Boromir turning and asking for the ring, while it still has all the potential energy of everything else that's going to come for the rest of the movies while still being so satisfying. And I love
No, I agree.
Fellowship of the Ring.
I think Fellowship is the one that,
Yeah.
I think I said on the Warcraft episode that's the one that connects with me emotionally, with Sean Bean. Sean Bean sort of like referring to Aragorn, sorry, as
Gorn.
Aragorn.
With an R.
Gorn. Aragorn as
Aragorn.
his king. Because he does that, right? In his
Oh,
final
yeah, my
death
captain,
scene.
my king.
That gets me very emotional every time I watch it. And that movie has probably just the greatest fucking decapitation of all time. That decapitation is the most badass thing I think I've ever seen. Just like his like pull back and just Aragorn swing around. Oh my God. Like it's
And those moments in those movies that remind you that like this is the guy who made Dead Alive.
Yes, that is one of those
and
moments.
Bad Taste.
Yes.
And like I love those reminders when you're watching those movies.
I have no idea how he got away with that in a PG-13 movie, but it is the coolest fucking thing.
Those are. Well, I mean, that's, you know, not to totally fall down the rabbit hole of like the fact that, American society, like we can have the most insane graphic violence and it's PG-13 and like one set of nipples on a woman and it's R. Like the weird sexlessness of our filmmaking is very strange.
I did watch recently South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, and I forgot like that's basically a theme of that movie, that like we will put up with much violence, but if you say a naughty word, nope, you're done.
Yeah. Like the things that America chooses to be prude about, and then the things that it chooses to be like so gnarly about, it's very weird.
But sorry.
Very, very weird and expressed very strangely in our cinema.
Yeah.
Okay, number 4, I mentioned it at least in a previous episode, is the Royal Tenenbaums.
Yes.
I had a bit of a son of a bitch for a grandfather who is, and I'm using that term, in reference to Royal Tenenbaum in the Royal Tenenbaums, but like I think that movie just, it's insane, silly version of like in a dysfunctional family in a dollhouse. I just think that it's amazing.
Yeah. No,
and I love it so much, and it connected with me at a young age, and I've just never been able to really let go of it.
It's interesting. The only reason why I love that movie. The only reason why I don't go back to it is because of the subject matter of, oddly enough, wrist slitting. I just can't handle that scene.
It's the suicide attempt.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
Yeah, I just can't handle it. And it's funny because there are several movies that are like that, where it's like, I won't go back and watch Pet Sematary because it has an Achilles tendon cutting scene, and I can't handle that. I'm just like, nope, I don't ever want to see that again. There's weird forms of violence that sometimes I just can't handle, and for some reason, the attempted suicide in Royal Tenenbaums makes me not want to go back to it. That's the only thing.
It's really tough.
Yeah.
That's a performance from Luke Wilson that is, I think, really understated and very underrated.
Oh yeah.
I just love that movie.
Yeah.
And okay, game time decision.
Okay.
For my number 5, I'm trying to decide between a movie that like I haven't watched in a few years, but in the 2010s I watched it more than almost anything else, and just an absolutely defining film for my childhood.
Oh, seems pretty significant.
Sorry?
Seems pretty significant.
Yeah, okay. Well, then, you know what? When we list our 6 to 10, I'll talk about the one that I revisited a million times, and I'm almost going to feel bad bumping it from my 5. But my number 5 favorite movie is Tremors. Tremors is a masterpiece.
I'm not disagreeing.
Going back to the Kevin Bacon of it all, that movie, talk about a creature feature. Yeah. Talk about such a satisfying movie. It's such a great concept that really gets played out to its best result. There's great kills. There's great set pieces. It's so, I love Tremors. I mean,
I think I just always think of Kevin Bacon yelling, "Fuck you!" like down.
Fuck you! Oh my gosh.
No, there's
so good.
There's something about that movie. I remember watching it many times on television growing up. Like, it was definitely a movie that I went back to a lot. That's a really great. It
had the little girl from Jurassic Park. Yeah,
that's a great list. Oh, I forgot she was in it. And just kind of the concept of just like that sort of like you can't step on the ground and stuff like that. Like, that created such an interesting play for that film.
It creates floor is lava.
Yeah.
It's like giant penis monster coming for you out of the ground. There's the great scene where it swallows the station wagon down into the dirt. It's, and also it's the great thing of like, if, spoilers to anyone who hasn't seen Tremors, but it does the great build. Like, the first time you see Tremors, the first few times, it's all the little snakes are coming out of the ground and grabbing stuff and attacking people, and people are being afraid of it. And so for the first half of that movie, if you haven't seen that movie before, you think it's about these like monstery little, like, as thick as like an arm, long, snaky worm things. Yeah. And then you realize those are just its tongue. Yeah. And it is so good. Yeah. I just, that movie. And it spawned an insane franchise that is that has no good movies. Like, I mean, when I was a kid, I really liked Tremors 2, and I'm sure there'd probably be things that I would still like about it now, but all those sequels are absolute trash. But the first Tremors movie is incredible.
It's strange how I can't not think of that always first when I think of Kevin Bacon. Like that is kind of, to me,
That mullet.
Yeah, it's I just, that's when I think the name Kevin Bacon, that is the image. I picture him in that mullet, like at that age, just like that is his
Sandy.
Yeah, like, and I mean, he's a great actor, but like that role is always gonna forever be the one that I think I'm gonna remember the most.
Well, and he is a guy who is second and third build in a lot of movies.
Yes.
Thinking about like someone like Strathairn, but like,
yeah, true.
Like Kevin Bacon just getting to be like the lead of a monster movie is just so good.
Yep. Wow, that's really funny. I didn't even realize that Tremors. Oh, well, it makes sense that we ended up doing a Kevin Bacon game in this show.
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, and I love Kevin Bacon, but it's not like I like adore Kevin Bacon. But man, Tremors is just the best.
Cool.
It's so good.
I like your list. So just keeping with...
Thank you. I like your list.
Thank you.